Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cleave podcast. I'm John the Front, and today we are bringing back one of our most listened to conversations we have ever recorded. This episode originally aired a couple of years ago, back when our podcast had a different name and a much smaller audience, but the message has only become more relevant. In fact, this conversation on boundaries has continued to be one of our most downloaded episodes of all time. And as our community has grown, we realize there are so many of you who have probably never heard it. So we decided to revisit it, refresh the beginning, and share it again in two parts. In this conversation, we are joined by our good friend, Rachel Wood. Rachel is someone that Ashley has learned so much from over the years, especially around emotional health, family systems, relationships, and of course, boundaries. At the time of this recording, Rachel was also studying mental health counseling, and she brought such a thoughtful, grounded, and faithful perspective to this topic. And honestly, this conversation helped shape so much of the language we now use around boundaries, truth, forgiveness, and healing. Because boundaries are one of the most misunderstood topics in faith, family, marriage, and also emotional health. A lot of people hear the word boundaries and assume it means being selfish, cutting people off, withholding love, or refusing to forgive. But that is not what healthy boundaries are. At their best, boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are often what makes real love possible. In this first part, we talk about what boundaries actually are, why people pleasing can become a form of control, how resentment often reveals where we have abandoned ourselves, and why Christlike love does not require us to live without truth, agency, and self-respect. We also talk about family systems, attachment, sacrifice, personal revelation, and the spiritual courage it takes to stop living from fear and start living in truth. So, whether you are new to this conversation or whether you heard it years ago and need to hear it again with fresh ears, we hope this episode gives you language, clarity, and permission to see boundaries in a more faithful and healing way. So without further ado, here is part one of our conversation with Rachel Wood on Christ-like boundaries. Let's jump into it. I'm with two amazing women, and we're so excited to be here. But Ash, do you want to introduce our guest, Rachel?
Yes, this is Rachel Wood. She is amazing. I have told you all about her before.
Oh my gosh.
But you are going to learn so much. There's so many good things that she has to teach us about boundaries. So, Rachel, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you know so much about boundaries?
Oh my gosh. Ash. Hey, first of all, Ashley and I are Marco Polo big time friends. During the week, we Marco Polo each other and we nerd out on all the things.
Really good conversations. And sometimes I actually send the Marco Polos. She sends to me and I send them to John.
That's
Oh my gosh.
So
no.
like, you have to listen to what she says. It's so good.
No, I am a psychological nerd, I guess, if you want to call it that. A psychology nerd. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Psychological sounded crazy, but a psychology nerd. And I think it's because I've been in a lot of pain in my life. I've had things happen to me and I've had to kind of figure this out. So it's fun to have friends that nerd out on this kind of stuff. And I just love it. I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of learning about it and applying it to my life. But essentially, I am a life coach. I became a life coach after my divorce. I have 2 boys and 5 stepkids, and I'm married to an awesome guy. And I love to figure things out and understand my life better and why I got where I was. And it really is just kind of a self-reflection thing. And it's fun to have friends that love to do that with you. And so I think Ash is awesome. I've learned so much from her. So it's equal.
No, thanks, Rach. So where do we start? What this conversation about boundaries, help us know a little bit about why we need boundaries. What are they?
Oh, and I want to say one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to say
Go for it.
why I like this stuff. I am in grad school right now, getting my master's in mental health counseling. And so I think that's another reason why I love this stuff and love studying it. And so, yeah, forgot to say that part. But
Well, and the other thing I would just say, just in hearing you, and I've heard so much about Rachel, and then we've got to know each other a little bit before filming, but I think that what you just shared is so important. Like, we have life experiences, and those life experiences, even when they're hard and difficult and challenging, can be used for good. And it's amazing to me to see that from your like life adversity, you've been able to turn something into a great passion that then is able to help other people. You've certainly helped Ash and I in a tremendous way. We're grateful for technology, Marco Polo, podcasts, whatever it is, we can all help each other and like really rise above our circumstances. So
Yeah, we're in this together, and God doesn't waste anything.
no,
There's no, I shouldn't have gone through that, or if I would have known this. Like, everything can be used for our good. And I've learned so much about myself. And there's things I look back and I'm like, geez, I wish I knew this, but you can't know what you don't know.
But when you do know it,
Yeah.
at least for me, because I start geeking out over this as well, you realize figuring out the human condition and like the mortal experience it can be kind of textbook. You know what I mean? And it's like, once you study it, and I think that's what my hope would be from this conversation, is that we can understand it better. And regardless of where you're at, and if you feel like you need boundaries or not, that you'll learn something that can be applicable. And when you add that to your toolbox, like as you go through life, it can just be such an amazing blessing. So I think it's going to be a great discussion. But yeah, we're going to start with boundaries. What are they?
For me, well, I guess I didn't know what boundaries were. I remember going to therapy and my therapist was like, boundaries. I had to Google it. I had no clue. I mean, if you would have asked me, I would have said, like, of course I love myself. And of course I have a high self-esteem. And of course I love God. And of course I love others. And like, none of it would just be dismissed because I didn't realize I was struggling from boundaries.
Yeah.
It really is the answer to everything.
It is. And it's a big buzzword right now. I feel like people hear it enough and they think, oh yeah, surely I do that. It's the same thing I feel like when we're talking about forgiveness and I'm like, yeah, I know how to forgive or love others. I know how to love others. And then when my life started not working the way I wanted to, I had to go in and really look at what those things meant. So hopefully that's what we can gain from this discussion of boundaries. What really is it?
Yeah. So boundaries are essentially a sign that we hold up that says who we are, what we are willing to do, what we're not willing to do. And it essentially teaches others how to treat us. So if we have no boundaries, it would be like building a mansion and being like, anyone can come in and grab whatever they want. You can come in at any time. You can do whatever you want to this house. And you can see, obviously, that would be a problem, right? Because we care about the house that we just built. And so it causes a lot of problems when we don't have boundaries. And then we wake up and we wonder, how did I get here? What is going on? And the answer is always boundaries. So we kind of have to know about them. We need to know how to implement them and what they are not.
What are some like examples? Because I did a little survey on our Instagram account last night, and I was asking, do you need boundaries? Who are you struggling with boundaries? And it's always interesting to see different people's responses through that. But I think for some, and when we've had conversations about it, why would you need boundaries? Like, they almost feel like it's not Christlike to have boundaries. And so maybe give some very just tangible, simple examples of what a boundary is that's pretty common.
So the simplest one is no. No is a boundary.
Yeah.
It says no is no. And if you're not used to having boundaries, or if you're in a relationship with someone who can walk all over you and come into your house and take whatever they want, it would be really rude to lock that door all of a sudden. And everyone's like, well, we came to grab and take. You're always providing in this house. Yeah. And now it's not available. What's wrong with you? Where did my sweet, kind, generous, loving person go? Yeah. So it gets, just like everything, Satan has a counterfeit for everything. He has a counterfeit for love with lust. He has a counterfeit for a moment of pleasure that seems like happiness. And there's always these counterfeits. The counterfeit to boundaries is control, which is so interesting because we voted against that in the pre-existent. We did not want to be controlled, yet it is the thing we participate in 100% of the time when we don't have boundaries. There's no in between. You either have boundaries or you have a control issue.
I have a good example in our marriage of where John held a boundary on me, and I was not used to this. And I was like, oh, it helped me think about something in a whole new way. In my house, growing up, like on Saturdays or whatever, my dad would just do a whole list of things for my mom. And he would be like, okay, what do you need done? And she would give him the quote unquote honeydew list and he would do it. And this worked for them. And so John and I get married and I go to give him a honeydew list and he looks at me like, you want me to do all these things like today? I was like, well, yeah, it's Saturday. Like, this is what men do. And he was like, no. And he was kind of insulted, kind of like, you think I'm going to spend my whole day working and doing all these things? And I was like, yeah, I do. And anyway, he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he said to me, I'm happy to help you and do things you want me to do, but you need to give me a heads up. And I need you to ask me in advance. Give me some time to accomplish the things you're wanting without telling me it has to be done today. And this list, he's like, can't you do a few of these things too? And I was speechless because it was just different than what I had seen. But if John would have done that just to make me happy, then he's going to feel resentful. And then I would be the control one of, no, you have to do this for me. Anyway, it was just I think about it a lot of like where he said no. And I had to learn a different skill set. Like, oh, if I want all these light bulbs changed or a door handle on the door changed, I'm going to have to ask him in advance, hey, this thing needs to be done. Would you just consider it and let me know when you can get to it? And that's awesome. That has
I loved
for us. But I had to shift how I saw it because he held a boundary.
Yeah. And most people, if they have a different conception of what love is, and maybe we could have from John's perspective of how that happened. But if you think that love is doing anything for anyone at all times and breaking your back and being self-sacrificing, that would be very rude, right? Yeah. Like, how dare he say no to me? He's my husband. I should have access to him whenever I want. He should do these things for me because that's love. So we have to redefine what love is.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember doing that early on. And because Ash knows I will do a lot.
Yeah, he does.
He helps a lot.
It was more of wanting to be mindful of, okay, I need maybe a break. And so can we block out a certain number of hours during the day and we mutually agree upon, okay, this is when we're going, it was coming together as a couple. But when you were saying that, the thing that brought to my mind, I remember reading on LDS.org, there's lots of resources on boundaries, actually. Yeah. And some people are surprised to hear that, but I'm like, no, even the church talks about where boundaries are appropriate, especially as it relates to emotional health. But the word that they used in the article was, if you have feelings of resentment. And I think for me, it was like, I don't want to resent you and you don't want to resent me, because if we let that resentment come in and canker our hearts and our souls, this isn't going to go well. And so I'm grateful. Intuitively, I knew, no, we're going to stop this early on in our marriage. And then we've been able to get into a groove of what absolutely works so that resentment doesn't come. And I think that's the big one, is that if you're ever in, especially in a marriage relationship or a family relationship, because I think that's where people take advantage of each other the most, because for the sake of family, we do things. If you have those feelings of resentment, that's when you need to give a good hard look to the core of why you're feeling that emotion, and maybe a boundary does need to be in place. But to your point, that's not a wall and you cannot penetrate it, and it's this,
Well, and you always tell me, and I'm sure you'll talk about it, but boundaries are love. And, at the time, I didn't see that there was anything wrong with what I was doing. I didn't know that that would be offensive to John. I just felt like, well, this is what I see men do. You're a man, like, here's your honeydew list. And so I'm so grateful that he told me, oh, that doesn't actually work for me. And it helped me see it in a new light, because really I would have never wanted to hurt him. But if he never told me, but just resented me and did anyway, that's not him loving me, right? And it's not me loving him to control him.
And it leads to disconnect, right? Yeah. Which is our number one human need, is connection. We have to survive, we have to have that love, that connection. It's a basic need, and we are basically built on relationships. That's how we're built. We're in family units. We need community. We need each other. And so it makes sense that if he had a fear Ashley's going to reject me and I'm going to be abandoned if I say something, then I'm just going to go do this. The problem with that, it sounds good on the outside, like I'm just being a good husband, but then you resent and now you're the victim. So it creates villain victim mentality.
Yeah.
And that's where marriages start to deteriorate because you add that up over time. How in the world are you going to have connection? That's very disconnecting and it's very dishonest because you have to pretend to be someone that you're not and you don't want to be. And then you get to be the tyrant. So it's the tyrant slave mentality or the dictator. It's not a relationship. It's a dictatorship. So,
and where I think that this wreaks a lot of havoc in the LDS community, especially, is people kind of weaponize the words love, forgiveness, service, family as these like catch-all things to control people to do what they want them to do, right?
Yep.
And we then do that to ourselves as well because we want to be Christ-like. And so we say, okay, well, I'm just going to love, I'm just going to serve. And then the natural man feelings come up of resentment, and then you beat yourself up of I'm such a horrible person, and the shame cycle kicks in. And so this is just one little example that could have ended in a really, really big domino effect. So when you understand this very simple concept of boundaries, and we're going to get into the doctrine side of it too, you realize, no, to be Christ-like, to have actual real love is to be boundaried. And you need those tactical tools.
I would say just even a different word that would help us understand what boundaries are is self-advocating. That's really a boundary.
You have to know yourself to have boundaries, which a lot of us don't. We're so used to other people making decisions for us. And as children, a lot of times we don't have autonomy. We don't have differentiation between our parents where we look to them and they tell us what to think and what to feel. If we don't grow out of that and have our own autonomy, that causes problems as an adult. I think of it as a spectrum. Like none of us in the church want to be selfish. I think we can all agree that selfishness is not something we want.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is a spectrum on the flip side of that. And Satan doesn't care where he gets us, through the front door or the back door. The exact extreme opposite is selflessness, less self. So you've got too much self and less self. In the middle is just self. And we have to know ourselves. If we are self-sacrificing, we are being selfless, that is not a good thing because we're lying to everyone around us about what we do and don't want to do. And then we hold it against them secretly. And then it breaks down the connections. Being selfish does the same thing. We've got to know where we are on the spectrum. We have to know ourselves to actually have love for ourselves and have boundaries. And that is work.
Ash has taught me this very subtle words matter, I know, in doctrine and in scripture. But when we talk about the first and great commandment, we're first supposed to love God.
Yes.
Then it's love thy neighbor as thyself. And so it's really, you need to love God. Then you need to love yourself so that then you can love your neighbor.
Yes.
And if you're betraying and sacrificing yourself so much that you're whittled down to the shell of a person, you're not doing anything for your neighbor. In fact, you might even be manipulating your neighbor and over-serving because you want the praise to come back or whatever. And it's like the whole thing gets out of whack.
Right? Like we can do a lot of enablement of others where we shouldn't be helping them. That actually gets in the way of their progression. But that can all just come from...
I love to break this down into two, because my brain, it gets kind of mushy. I like to break it down in a framework that makes sense for me. I'm going to share it if it helps you, great. You either have boundaries or you're acting in control of others. There's two ways to be a controller. You can be aggressive, and that's very overt, like, do what I want you to do. And we've seen people lash out. Typically men are like, it's okay for them to be like that, and we allow men. Women, not so much. You can't really be aggressive, right? So women learn to be more covert if they control. It has to be dressed up in a nice dress and have a smile and be nice. This is how women control, with kindness. I might take you cookies and you're the new person in the neighborhood and I just want you to really like me and think that I'm nice, so I'm going to bring you cookies. I could do that so that you like me. So I'm trying to control your perception of by being nice. We call it love bombing, right? And I could also bring you cookies just because I love you and I was thinking about you. So the same action, but the motive behind it matters. One is controlling in kindness, and the other one is just because I had and I have to give.
Yeah.
How do you know the difference between the manipulation and the real authentic person? Usually covert controlling is socially acceptable and hard to detect. And so most people, if they don't have boundaries, are covert controllers. And I'm a recovering control enthusiast, is what I call it, a people pleaser, right? You tell me how you want me to be, and I will conform. I will be so good at that. I will read you. I will know what you need. I will have it there before you even know you needed it. And then we can love each other. That's not love. That's control, because it's a take. I'm not giving. I'm actually giving to take from you. There's a string attached. True giving doesn't have a string attached. There's no strings attached in gift giving.
Yes.
There is actually a superpower, and it's discernment of knowing when someone's motive is to control you, to manipulate you, even if it's in kindness, to take from you is really what it is. Because they're not getting their needs met, and they need to get their needs met. So they're being graspy and controlling to get it met, versus getting their needs met, knowing who they are, and then being authentic and freely giving. Two totally different things.
I learned this too. Therapy. I was in formal therapy, and there was an event that I didn't want to go to. Somebody that I love, I was really dreading it. And so I brought it up. I was just like, what do I do? And I honestly thought that I was wrong. I was just like, man, why am I being so selfish? Like, I should be able to show up and support this person in this way. And, my therapist was like, it sounds like you really don't want to go though. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I don't. And she was like, tell me the reasons again. And so I did. And she said, so why are you going? And I said, well, she would be so hurt if I didn't go. She would be probably even angry. And I don't want to have to answer to that. And she goes, why are you trying to control her?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Ashley, why are you trying to control her? And I was like, what do you mean? It took me a minute. I didn't understand what she was saying. I was like, I'm not trying to control her. And she was like, yeah, you're going to betray yourself and do something that you don't want to do for the sake of her perception of you.
Yes.
Why are you trying to control her perception of you? And then she asked me, in movies, who's the person always trying to control things? People, things, situations, perceptions, the villain. Yeah. And in the scriptures and in our lives, who's the person that's always trying to control things? Satan. Yes. So why are you choosing to be in line with those roles? It just totally shifted everything. I would have never known or possibly conceived on my own before that by doing this thing that I thought was good for another person, I was actually trying to control her, because I didn't want to have to deal with the feelings she would have about me if I didn't do what she wanted me to do. So
exactly. That's exactly what we all do. It's not like them against us. If we're not aware, we 100% result to control. All of us do. And that makes sense, right? If I'm scared of rejection, or if I have a need that needs to get met, I don't want somebody, and we dress it up in a bow so it sounds better. So, I'm just being nice. I don't want her to feel this way, when really that's just code for, I don't want to be rejected. Yeah. We got to look behind the layer that looks fluffy and sweet and kind and nice to the fear behind the person.
Yeah.
To be able to see it for what it is. And so we do this, like, I don't want to hurt your feeling, when really not being honest is the most hurtful of all.
yeah.
Right.
By being honest, we can have reality, and we can have a real discussion about what's happening. I love that example, because we all do it.
I think the hard part, again, in probably Christianity, but in the LDS faith as well, is you can hopefully from that example, we all relate to this. I think in church callings, okay, did we just keep saying yes because we're just supposed to say yes all the time to anything that anyone does? Or in family units, it's the same thing. Well, mom and dad decided that for Thanksgiving, this is what we're doing. And even though there's 40 plus people in this family that may have different needs, we're all going to will all of them. And we do that. Well, I need to love mom and dad. I need to, and so we constantly are self-sacrificing. And I think, to your point, we can go the other extreme where it's just purely selfish and we're just wanting to, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And that isn't it either. But I think you got to really focus on those emotions and what the intent behind it. If you're trying to control, even control people's perception of who you are, then that motive is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And in yourself, if you're feeling feelings of resentment, then there's a sign that you need to do something about it.
Yeah.
That's on you, not on them. And I
Yes.
think you would mention that. Maybe talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit of when you're trying to wait for somebody else to change.
Yeah, I think that's when we know we're the victim. And maybe we truly are. Maybe we've been victimized. You could have extreme cases from like sexual abuse to affairs to where you really are maybe the victim. Does it help you to have the mentality of, I'm at the effect of this other person? It's like I'm standing in oncoming traffic and cars keep hitting me and I can't do anything about it. I'm just being whipped around by the ponytail. And we actually do have control over only ourselves. I can't control Ashley's perception of me or your perception of me. And we die trying. We try so hard to control the external when really it's an internal, it's an inside job.
Yeah.
When we do that, we can live authentically. Anything external, we're living a false version of ourselves because we're not internally reflecting and allowing ourselves to love ourselves from an authentic place. And then we get to let other people be who they want to be. I say it's like sorting laundry. So this is yours, this is mine. This is yours, this is mine. And if you have been in a very controlling relationship, it feels like this. These are just some examples. It feels like they come to you and they throw up in your hands this nasty, green, slimy throw up. And you're sitting there holding it and you're like, I hold people's throw up for them. I'm so Christlike. That's what I do. I've been taught since I was a little girl. That's what you need to do. You need to hold people's stuff for them. So you're sitting there holding it and I actually don't want to hold this. And it's actually not even mine and it stinks really bad, but I got to hold it because that's what I need to do, right? So that's the lie that we tell ourselves. So we're holding it. But what if we were they came and threw up and we went like this with our hands and we're like, I'm so sorry, you feel sick. And, there's a bucket over there. I'm here for you. We let them deal with their own throw up. We're not holding it for them.
Can you just go back to I like that, but give an example of what that looks like.
So like
Hold somebody else's throw up for them.
Right. So usually in a lopsided or unhealthy dynamic, you have a hyper responsible person that's always holding the throw up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a hypo person who's like heavy in addiction or has major issues going on because over time, that's just going to be the fruit of that behavior. And so that other person's always like enabling them and making sure that nobody knows and everything's great. And we're just this happy family and everything's fine. And they're controlling that way. So there's this control dynamic. There's no love. This person takes advantage of the hyper responsible and doesn't ever take responsibility for what they're doing or how they're affecting people. So it's that selfishness and selflessness dynamic. And where's the self, right? So that's not love. That's control.
Yeah.
We can't do both.
And I think as you were explaining that, I feel like that person that does the hyper, if they ever try to say, no, I'm going to put this down, the hypo person who's kind of the destroyer, they will suddenly become the victim of you saying, I'm not going to do that for you. They will turn it around and make you the problem. Well, I need you to do this because it's never just, oh, I see because my behavior got me here.
Right.
It's just, how could you do this to me?
Right.
So,
because it's control. Love requires boundaries, period. If we don't have boundaries and we can't tell the people that we're with, no, or hey, that doesn't work for me, but I am willing to do this, or I'm not willing to do that, but I can do this, or period, I'm not willing to do that. If we can't have those open discussions, then most likely we're in a controlling dynamic where someone has way too much power and we feel very powerless. And that's that parent-child relationship that really causes huge problems. I think what you're saying is true. We cannot love when we're in a controlling dynamic. So how do we know when we're in a controlling dynamic? How do we know the fruits of that? The symptoms, right?
yeah.
And so I think that's important to talk about the symptoms of, we call it yelling at the fruit. So if you have an apple tree and you're yelling at it because you want it to be an orange tree, and we're so mad that it's not producing oranges or not producing cherries the way we thought it was going to, we can't yell at the fruit. That's just the symptom. The porn, the affair, the drugs, the alcohol, those are obviously like really big things, but it could be smaller things. We all have things, right, that produces fruit. We have to look at the character structure underneath it. We have to look at the trunk and the root system before we can even talk about the fruit and change the fruit.
Ash has really loved the parable of the olive tree.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you can tie that in too on fruit. I mean, what did the Lord of the vineyard do?
Yeah, the master of the vineyard. I mean, he stands watch over the vineyard and he looks for any sign of corruption.
Yes.
And then I don't want to misquote the Book of Mormon, but I might, but this is the gist. But it's like he roots it out, the corruption. He digs it out. He stands watch and he digs it out. And then he replaces it with healthy growing material.
Yeah.
And when I read that, it helped me so much in seeing relationships and applying that. The way we're interacting with each other and our expectations of each other and the way we're showing up in our lives, like that is all, this is the tree and the branch. And wherever there's corruption, it has to be attended to. It has to be seen. We in the church are very, very, very good at becoming just positive, just
change your thoughts.
Things with positivity, and we never see reality.
Or they think, that, again, this is where people can weaponize love and it can hurt themselves in the process. I just know that love is the only thing that will cause somebody to change. But then that love is nothing but self-betrayal.
But love is not actually. And you need to pay attention to it because the fruits of true love will be the fruits of true love. It will actually be a sense of fullness and trust and care. When those aren't the fruits in your relationship, you're probably not dealing with love.
I think that this is so important. We have to redefine what love is. If we have this culture that teaches us that love is be a doormat and let anybody have access to you at any time and never say no because that's not Christ-like, let's talk about what Christ did. Let's talk about God is so boundaried that we can't even be in his presence because we're so unclean without a savior. That's how loving he is. So then someone might say, well, that's rude. Why would God do that? We are his children. Because he would cease to be God if he didn't have that boundary. He would not be God. We have to have a savior to stand in God's presence. It is not an option. We have to have that if we want to be with God or in his presence. And so love is boundaries. God loves us so much. He showed us his boundaries. He tells us who he is. He says, this is, I will allow this, I won't allow. It's the laws of the universe. And we may not agree with the laws, like the law of gravity. Let's say I'm like, I don't believe it. It's a bunch of hodgepodge. I'm going to go jump off that building. Well, I don't have to believe his laws. They're still in play and they still have natural consequences. I'm going to get worked, right? If I just test it out. It's so funny, but we do that with all these laws where we're like, yeah, I don't like that law. I'm not going to align myself with that. And so it causes a lot of problems for us. And he loves us so much. He lets us work out our salvation until we finally realize, okay, maybe I do believe this law. Help me out here, which requires the atonement. So we have to know God, and he knows himself perfectly. He'll never betray himself to come down to our level and be like, okay, you know that law of gravity? Let's just scratch that for now, and we'll do something else.
No matter how hard we're praying to let me jump off this building and not fall, he loves us so much, he allows us to make the same mistakes, even if we're praying for that not to happen. Somewhere along the way, we have to be smart enough to be like, maybe my expectations or how I'm behaving here is actually the problem.
Yeah.
I can't just pray this away. I might need to make some changes within myself.
Yeah. And Christ, let's look at his life. When the Pharisees were really upset that he was healing people and helping people, they went and conspired against him. He left the city. He's like, I don't need these people to tell me what I can and cannot do. That doesn't work for me. He went out to sea and people followed him. And when he went to the temple and people were exchanging money and trying to get gain, he didn't sit there and go, okay, well, maybe today. He knows who he is, right? So he actually removed himself and thought about it for a while. And then he went in and turned the tables over. So he wasn't reacting, but there was some enmity there. There was some anger, which no emotion is bad. By the way, they're all good. They're all neutral. It's what we do with the emotion. We need to feel all the emotions. So he was upset, rightfully so. And he showed the people, as for me and my house, this is what we do. And so God and Jesus Christ are very boundaried with us. We don't get away with things. We reap what we sow. In Galatians, it talks about that, right? And maybe there's some time that passes so we don't get it right away, but eventually we do reap what we sow every time because it's a law. We may not like it, but it's the reality. So boundaries tells people who we are, what we're willing to do, what we're not willing to do, and how to treat us. God is extremely boundaried. We know who he is. He has made himself known and will continue to make himself known unto us when we align with him. If we don't, and we say, I don't want that, we wreak havoc because that's what we sow when we don't align with God, is havoc in our lives. And then we yell at the fruit because we're mad that it's not what we thought it was going to be or supposed to be. I think part of the reason why I got into all of this too was I have 2 boys, they're adopted, and understanding attachment and how that plays in the character structure of the tree. If you think of the fruit as the symptoms or what we sow, at the end of the day, that's what we get back. There's branches and there's a trunk. And within that trunk and this kind of helps us have compassion, right? Because we don't want to be like, well, look at you over there, doing it all wrong. And
With your bad fruit.
Yeah. And look at me doing it right. Like, that's not what we're doing here. We're all in the same boat together. We're all struggling on the struggle bus of how to do boundaries and how to know who we are and align with God. So how that works is in that trunk, because the trunk brings in and out the nourishment from the root system, right? So in the trunk, we have attachment. If someone is really poor at boundaries, they need to go to a good therapist, hopefully. And there's a lot of that, we want to get a good therapist that can help them anyway. But yeah, attachment is number one. If someone is struggling, then they probably have something from childhood that needs to be resolved before they can have separation. So it's fascinating to me. Isn't that interesting, the caveat of, in order to have healthy boundaries and be separate, because even though you two are married, you're separate individuals.
Yeah.
And we're taught that love is enmeshment, that we're supposed to like the same things and do the same things and all that. That's enmeshment. You don't need to take on every aspect of your partner. That's not healthy. You are your own individual, right? And you complement each other. To have healthy attachment to each other, you actually have to be separate. You would think it's the opposite. Yeah. Attachment sounds like enmeshment. So it can get confusing, but if there's a boundary problem or an enmeshment problem, because that's what happens when we have poor boundaries, we attract other people who won't even honor our boundaries, even if we have them. And we have this dynamic, right? And so then we're not a separate person and we can't have healthy attachment. So those two are kind of like shotgun driver, best friends. Have to go back to attachment if there's issues with the separation piece, which is boundaries. Yeah. Boundaries and separation are the same thing.
Yeah. And that attachment is so important because it's the thing that causes us to operate from really a fear of abandonment, I think is at the core of a lot, don't you think? A lot of unhealthy attachment. So either we don't know how to give ourselves to others, or, we don't know how to be honest, or, a lot of our attachments from childhood get in the way, but that fear of rejection or abandonment just controls, which is why we become people pleasers.
Yes.
Or we decide that people need to, do what we say, and we have all the justifications as to why it's that control on either end of like, don't leave.
Yeah.
Don't tell me I'm bad. Don't see the bad parts of me. Just love me so that I never have to be alone.
Yeah.
What's interesting as I have gone through this whole understanding who I am and realizing that I am separate and I need to advocate for myself, and I can't allow others to dictate my actions, and I can also dictate others' actions. I've had to be brave enough to allow the people that have basically said, yeah, that doesn't work for me, to walk out of my life.
Yeah.
So it has actually caused me, like, I've lost relationships from doing this.
Yeah.
And that is painful because you want to be able to be your own individual and have people respect it and love it. and support you in that, but not all people do. It's like, well, if I can't control you, then I'm going to make you the problem, and then the relationship ceases to exist.
When you look at attachment style, it's, they're just two different extremes. One was wanting to control, the other was allowing to be controlled. And when you then have stood up and said, enough is enough, I'm not going to allow it, they still want to do that control. And that's the reason why we stay in those camps, is because we kind of know that taking that bold step forward could end in the relationship not going well, because sometimes both parties don't come to the table saying, let's get healthy together. I don't want to control you and you don't want to be controlled. Let's work on this together. But the other thing I was going to say, this is where I think it's so beautiful and powerful to see Heavenly Father's plan. He does put us in family units. He puts us in marriages where there is differences that are going to be needing to work themselves out. And I think that, we were talking to our kids the other day, and we were talking about the difference between masculine and feminine, and that really Jesus Christ is the perfect combination of both. And I think as you see wise people, mature people, healthy people, as they age, they kind of, you get a little bit of the masculine and the feminine together, and not in an enmeshed way, but you start shedding the need to control and to be controlled. And it kind of is this whole coming together. And that's the beauty, I think, of marriage and of family. But there's such a careful difference there, so that you don't go into full-fledged enmeshment with your unhealthy attachment styles. You can't allow that. But with time, you can both come together as two whole healthy beings, and it then works. And so it may be a sacrifice to get there. We're not all the way there yet, but the progress that we've made as we've learned a lot of these things has been phenomenal for our marriage and for our family. But I think for ourselves too. I just feel peace finally on the people pleasing. Like, I don't need to sacrifice myself over and over and let people just run over me to keep the peace.
And also to understand, I don't need to see John doing whatever I want him to do in order to feel loved. And what a freeing thing that has been for me to experience a love and grow into the understanding that I can request things and he gets to choose whether it's a yes or whether it's a no. And he still has the same amount of love for me. We've just really started to respect each other and where we're at. Obviously, in marriage, there's times that our presence with one another is really meaningful. And I think, when you have healthy relationships, this is a time where I'm going to choose to sacrifice because I love this person so much. But there's other times where we're asking each other, okay, do you want to come? Like, you don't have to come. I totally understand if you don't. Or it's like, are you okay if I don't go tonight? I would, I really am not feeling good, or I just would rather have a night off or whatever. And it's like, So that respect of just, I respect you as an individual, and I don't need you to jump to my demands in order for me to feel love. And if you don't, I'm taking it as rejection.
It's so freeing. And I love what you say. Essentially, we're in charge. We are in charge of meeting our needs. Our spouse isn't. We've been told, go get a guy or go get a girl and meet each other's needs and live happily ever after. And it is nice to request and to, we need each other. So I get that. But this is different. We're responsible to meet our needs. So if my husband is not into psychology for some reason and I need to nerd out on it, I have friends I can Marco Polo or something. Or if he's into football and I don't want to, he has friends that he can watch football with, which it's funny because he's not. But, we need to find want matches. We are in charge of our own safety. We are in charge of our own self. And when we're in a controlling dynamic, we're not the victim. We actually are just as equally messed up because we're attracting the very thing on the extreme opposite. So if you have an extreme taker, then you'll have an extreme giver. If you have someone who exploits, then you'll have somebody who is this charitable, give the world, self-sacrificing. So if you have someone who's selfless, you'll have someone who's selfish, and they find each other and they're like magnets to each other. And so how do we not be in those relationships?
I just had a thought while you're explaining that. And it tied back to when you were saying either extreme is bad. Like, and Satan doesn't care which extreme
They're
you
both
are.
miserable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Whether you're the aggressor or the total passive person, it doesn't matter. He can get you. But that reminded me of the way is narrow. The gates are narrow. There's not this wide gaping thing with extremes. It's like you have to find the middle ground, and it's narrow. And that's where you're going to find Jesus.
Yes.
And that's boundary.
Because when we are boundaried, we are more like him. Because we are acting like him. So when we are not boundaried, we're literally out of control. And so it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. You can get by, but there's no progression really. And then you're always just ticked at the other person because they're not living the way you want them to so that you can feel better. So they're always in control of how you feel.
Yeah, you're always at the mercy of somebody else's actions. Always.
And it's the grossest way to live because they can control you. That's the fallacy, right? I can't control other people. We can't. They get to decide how they feel, which I love you talked about. Sometimes, and this is why I think people don't want to have boundaries, it can result in rejection. It can, the very thing we feared in the first place.
Yes.
But rejection is just a feeling. So instead of holding the door shut like this and not letting rejection in, what if we opened it up and we were rejected? Then what? We lived and we moved on to the next rejection. Life is filled with rejections. And so when we're tiptoeing around reality, because that's reality, then we don't grow because we're like, just stay padded, stay with pillows around you so you never ever have an uncomfortable feeling. It's just a denial strategy and then we just don't grow. So not only do we hold our partner hostage and they can't grow because we're taking extreme responsibility for all of their actions, then we can't grow because we're living in a literal lie. It's not reality. And so I love this scripture. It's Proverbs 4:23, and it says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Or the NIV is, for everything you do flows from it. So you are responsible. I'm responsible to guard my heart. Nobody has access to it. And you could say, you are a 300-pound, elephant. And I'd be like, that's hilarious, right? Like, okay. But if I thought that some of that might be true, I'm going to get really defensive.
Yeah.
I have this personal belief, and you can judge me if you want on it, but I really think that whenever I'm or anyone's defensive about something, it's because we truly think that whatever the person accused us of is true inside.
Yeah.
And it could be a lie. But if we think it's true, it's like they strike a chord in us and we become just so defensive. So we can't really be offended if we don't have that in us. Laman and Lemuel were the perfect example. It's like everything Nephi did just offended them. They were so upset all the time, trying to control him to come back to live small. He wanted to live the way God. He wanted to have boundaries. He wanted to grow. And eventually they had to split.
Yeah.
The Lamanites and the Nephites could not get along. They had to go their separate ways. They tried to work it out, did not work. Another example is Abraham. And we've talked about this before. His dad was a literal idol maker. And he worshiped these idols. And so you can equate that to whatever you want nowadays, right? There's a lot of things we can worship, right?
A lot of idols.
A lot of influencers and people out there to worship. And not just that, but there's a lot of things we can all worship, right? Other than God. And so Abraham decided to leave that family system, and all hell broke loose, by the way. It didn't go well. And he decided to follow God. And even Lot, at some point, turned his tent towards Sodom. And he's constantly trying to help people realize, no, we want to go this way. But he had to sacrifice so much that ultimately he got to the point where the Lord was testing him with different sacrifices, tested him with Isaac.
Yeah.
And sometimes it requires sacrificing the thing that means the very most to us. It could be our family. In my case, it was my marriage. I had to lay it on the altar. It was so uncomfortable. I didn't want to do that. I didn't. I tried everything I could. And like I said, I was a control enthusiast. So a lot of times didn't even have boundaries, didn't even know what they were. But when we lay it out, and I'm not telling people to go do this, it could be our favorite sin. It could be anything, the way we treat our children, the way we treat our spouse. It could be anything. We have to lay that before the Lord and be willing to sacrifice. And it is the most painful, difficult thing, scary.
Yeah.
And yet on the other side of that is, and maybe you could describe some of this from your own experience in life, but it's so much peace, and it's like the floodgates open up, and all of a sudden you can see with a new lens you've never seen before, and growth like you wouldn't believe, but it requires sacrifice. There's a book called, I wrote it down because I love it, Isaiah Decoded. It's Ascending the Ladder to Heaven by Abraham Gilead. It's an awesome book about Gilead. There we go. It's an awesome book about the it's the micro descends that we do in life to be able to ascend in our own little tiny way, comparison to Christ and his ultimate. He went below everything to ascend above everything. So in our own little microcosmic way, we are doing the same thing. We have to sacrifice. There is no other way to do that, like we learn in the temple. There's no other way. We have to descend in order to ascend. That requires sacrifice. And boundaries help us do that. So if we're scared of boundaries, we won't do that at the level that we could. And so this is really, it's a prophetic code. Isaiah wrote this in his code that it's hard to kind of understand. But
You've never told me about this one.
Well,
I needed this. I can't wait to go read it.
It's an awesome book about, so I just wrote this down, prophecy that uses Israel's ancient history as an allegory of an end time scenario. So it's very relevant to our day. And Isaiah's Hebrew gospel preempts, this is just the description, anyways, the New Testament by teaching the path through which God empowers his children to ascend to the highest heaven. And Jacob writes about this as well. So this isn't a new concept, but it's amazing to me that we came here to do this, but we really don't want to.
Right.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's so painful.
It's so hard.
Nobody wants to be in pain.
When you taught me about that concept of you're doing what Abraham did in his sacrifice of Isaac, and at some point we will all be tested in this way. Can we sacrifice the thing that makes, that we love the very most, or one of the things that we love the very, very most, in order to follow God or live in truth? And it helped me have that paradigm shift of, I'm not just suffering, but my suffering means something. It's a way that I'm proving to myself and God that I am his, and I'm willing to follow him no matter what the consequences are. Yeah. And in my case, it wasn't just follow him because he said, I need you to sacrifice these people. It was see the truth, acknowledge the truth, stand up for the truth. And then you're going to have to deal with the natural results of that.
Yes.
And because people who don't live in truth don't want you to live in truth or see the truth or call out the truth.
They're actually offended by it.
They're offended by it. And so they will reject you.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this, am I going to live in truth, aka with Jesus Christ as my guide, or rely on the arm of flesh and do the thing that all these other people want me to do? And when I understood that I was making a sacrifice to stay rooted in Christ, and that he had given these examples in the scriptures as a model for what we would each be doing, it just helped broaden my perspective. And then I started to pray for strength, and I had a new understanding, and I could pray, I guess, just for strength to get through it. Whereas before, maybe I was saying, just make this situation better for me. And then it was like, I understand now. Maybe I'm just going to have to be able to endure this.
And when you think about the temple, right? That's exactly what I just think Eve is a superstar. I know we're the only religion that really puts her in an awesome light, Christian religion, but she is. She's a superstar because she's looking at, she gets to that crossroad that Ashley's talking about, that we all get to, where we decide, am I going to betray myself, my core values and who I am, and follow, or am I going to follow the truth and God and align with him? And it's a sacrifice every time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what she didn't know because she hadn't experienced it yet. But I don't think she was naive at all. I think she was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. but I have to transgress, right? It wasn't a sin, it was a transgression. In order to ascend, I have to descend.
Right.
And there are times we have to do that in our lives if we want to progress.
Yeah.
If we want to stay in the Garden of Eden where things are
Yeah.
comfortable, even though it's miserable, we can.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like we push pause on our life and we call it play acting. You're just kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm just going through life like a robot. Everything's great. And really, you're just not growing.
Then maybe the Garden of Eden to those who are in there doesn't feel miserable because they're so used to it and they know it and there's good things about it.
Yeah.
They don't understand the growth that they're missing out on.
Yeah.
I think it feels miserable to not grow, though.
It
Do
does.
you agree or no?
Yes, it does. But
unless you know.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
talk yourself into the fact that you're happy, though. When
That's
you're,
true.
When you're
Yeah.
staying in denial, it's like you go into that rose-colored glasses, I'll just be positive and grateful
Very
about
true.
everything, and you mask the misery.
And
Yeah.
But yeah, the misery's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
If
that's
we're being honest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think we've seen that over and over again. We've seen people that stay in their little safety box that is their comfort zone. And look, I mean, we've used the word safety, and that's what we're all striving for. We want to feel safe. Where we do feel the most safe is in the arms of our Savior, right? Like it is there as we put our trust in him and not in ourselves and not in our partners and not, it's ultimately trust in him first and foremost. And I love all these examples in the scriptures because people always go, well, tell me where this in the scriptures it talks about boundaries. And it's like everywhere.
I have like 4
You know?
pages of different scriptures if you want them on
Well, we
boundaries.
probably will highlight a ton of them
Yeah.
next week too, like through social and stuff, and we can do it on the podcast too. But the thing that I think is also important, and this is just a slight pivot from boundaries, but you know, if someone's listening to this right now and they're going, okay, yeah, I have feelings of resentment, or yeah, I'm addicted to X, Y, and Z, which
Yeah.
means I'm not addressing my problems, or I'm in debilitating depression. And look, some of that actually, is for sure chemical, but sometimes for me in my life, it was situational. It was that I was in such people pleaser mode that I was betraying myself, and that led to depression, anxiety.
But you didn't know that.
No,
when
I
you were
didn't.
experiencing the depression.
No.
That's the funny thing.
Yeah, and
Like,
so
the answer to the depression was boundaries, but going through that, we didn't know how to discover that.
and that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So the point though in all of that is, and when I found finally the answers of what I needed for myself, and as somebody that's listening to this is maybe looking for answers in their own life, it is so crucial. Look at the examples in the scriptures because those are great guides and maps where you can learn lessons of where we talked about this in Nephi, where they sought to take away his life. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean death. It could be other ways that they're trying to take away your life, right? But these other examples that you shared are so powerful too. But when it comes to you individually, you're an individual. You're different than me. You're different than these two amazing women. And you're trying to look for your own answers. That's where personal revelation comes into play. And this is messy because like for you, your answer was divorce, right? And you didn't want that, but that was your answer. And I bet that took a ton of faith to get to that point and to get to that answer for yourself. And for us, we've also had to make some pretty unreal sacrifices that are similar to Abraham and Isaac, where it feels like you're sacrificing your only child. Like you can totally relate to what that's going through. Anyone that's listening to this is going to have to get personal revelation for themselves.
Yes.
One thing that Ashley and I learned through this process too, when getting is just a little tip on personal revelation. Yes, go to the right sources, go to temple, go to prayer, go to scripture, go to trusted friends, therapists. There's ways that you can get inspiration. But the process of writing down the thoughts that are in your head is also where the Spirit can come in and confirm whether it's revelation or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go through writing exercises and it becomes a dump journal and we can express our anger and I wish I could and that's okay. And that can be a part of our healing process too, to just get the anger out or whatever we're feeling. But it's also a way that we can get confirmation of spiritual promptings that are there. And so have the courage maybe to also write some of those things. If you're going to have to put boundaries in place and it's scary and nerve-wracking, you're going to need the Spirit to accompany you.
Yeah.
Because without it, you're not going to be able to do it.
No.
And
you need support.
yeah.
I think I love what you're saying, John, because we have to have that vertical relationship
Yeah.
with God, right? And it also grounds us. So I think of like this string going up and down, a beam of light. We also need the horizontal relationship.
Yeah.
Those are the people in our life that will come. I promise you that people will come into your life.
Yeah.
The Lord will place people in your life. You will be able to find people that can help you on this journey, but you cannot do it alone. You can't, he requires that we reach out horizontally as well.
Mhm.
We need that. And then, and we don't talk about this, I feel like, enough in the church. We have our ancestors.
Yes.
And we have our posterity, and they are eager and willing and want us to succeed, because I personally believe if we don't break these generational chains, it affects them.
I agree.
And so I think by looking at these things within ourselves, we actually help them
Yes.
progress,
Oh, yeah.
because we have a body right now and we can do that. So they're rooting for us. We all want to do this together, and we need each other.
And let me just say one thing on that, because I'm super passionate about it, but just so everyone knows, it is not just that they need quote unquote saving ordinances. Yes, they do. That unlocks that power, but the real family history work is exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
It's breaking these generational chains. And when you read in the scriptures and it talks about generational patterns and the hearts of the fathers, it's like we're all there helping each other. And I just...
And the traditions.
And the
Use of that,
traditions.
the traditions of the fathers,
Yes.
being handed down from one generation to the next.
Yeah. So could that not be that
Yeah.
it's generations of families that aren't putting boundaries in place, that are taking advantage of their siblings and of their parents and
But
of
they
their...
don't
No,
have
they don't.
emotional... if I look at my grandparents and where they were at and the understanding and the knowledge that they had of this stuff, it's like they didn't have the tools. They just did the very best they could. But certainly I think that they're in heaven now realizing, our posterities need to progress, but we were only able to get so far. And so they're helping us unwire some of those things that they didn't understand. So it doesn't have to be like, they were bad, we're having to break their awful
It's
chains.
amazing.
I mean, some of the behaviors are bad or can be bad, but more than anything, we have the ability to look at it from a compassionate lens of like, we're all doing this together.
Yeah. And it's never them against us.
No.
It's all of us together.
All right. So we are going to pause the conversation here for today. In part 1, we talked about what boundaries are, why they are not unchristlike, how control can show up in both aggressive and people-pleasing ways, and why truth, sacrifice, and personal revelation are such an important part of healing. But in part 2, the conversation turns toward one of the hardest questions of all. What do you do when you are trying to get healthy, but the other person does not want accountability, honesty, or change? That is where we talk about forgiveness, reconciliation, manipulation, addiction, safety, discernment, and what Christ-like boundaries can look like in real life. So make sure you come back for part 2, because for many people, this is where the conversation gets very personal. Until next time.